Expanding Knowledge, Chapter 4, Section 2. In this section, we are going to learn about how learning advanced in ancient Egypt. And we're going to look at three different areas in particular. We're going to learn about writing, math and science, and medicine. The first thing that we're going to talk about is hieroglyphs. This is an example of hieroglyphs written on papyrus or papyrus paper. There are 700 characters, which is where it began, and it grew to about 6,000 symbols. And hieroglyphs are different than our alphabet because instead of characters representing sounds, you have pictures that represent sounds, or they can represent words. The ancient Egyptians developed a type of paper called papyrus. They developed a paper called papyrus, and it was made from the reed of a papyrus plant. They cut it into strips, and then they would press it down and almost like interweave it with each other. Once it was dried, they would roll it into scrolls. And the scrolls were kind of neat because it made them very easy to carry. So these were kind of considered some of the first books. And we're going to watch a very short clip on hieroglyphs.
Throughout history, wars have been lost, governments deposed, and monarchs executed, all because their codes have been cracked. But code breaking can also be about knowledge and enlightenment. In the 19th century, scholars attempted to decipher the hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt. Although not written as a secret code, all knowledge of what they meant had been lost. Unraveling these messages from the ancient world would be one of the toughest challenges that code breakers ever faced. For over 1,000 years, the hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt were a complete mystery. Then the discovery of this stone in 1798 started an extraordinary intellectual race. Jean-Francois Champollion in France and Thomas Young in Britain both believed that the Rosetta Stone, as it was called, held the key to deciphering hieroglyphs. But the Rosetta Stone did not yield its secrets easily. For 2 decades, it would tantalize and frustrate two of the most brilliant men of their time. I've come to Egypt with Dr. Bill Manley, an authority on hieroglyphs, to find out how scholars got to grips with this long-forgotten script. We've come to the tomb of Ramesses VI in the Valley of the Kings.
Yep, this is a ramp for sliding himself up, goes all the way to the burial chamber.
Early Christians had forbidden the use of hieroglyphs, believing them to be pagan and sinful. As the centuries passed, all understanding was lost. Some scholars argued that hieroglyphs were a phonetic script, just like our alphabet. Others believed it was nothing more than primitive picture writing.
Now we're in the actual burial chamber of Ramesses VI, and we're surrounded by really mysterious scenes of the king's rebirth. And these are surrounded on all sides by hieroglyphic text. Now after the 5th century AD, people couldn't read these texts anymore, so they looked at the scenes and saw that the scenes were mysterious and obscure. And so they assumed that the hieroglyphic script was mysterious and obscure itself.
So the pictures convey vague ideas of enemies and capture and rebirth and so on.
Yeah, the scenes look mysterious, but the hieroglyphic texts are actually there to make clear what they meant.
The Egyptians also developed some of the first geometry. And how this worked is, and why they did this, is because after the Nile would flood, they would have to restore property lines. And geometry really helped with this because it kind of marked the perimeter of the property lines. And squares and triangles are sacred to Egyptians. Obviously, you can see right here, you have a triangle in the pyramids. And if you were to walk outside of the pyramids, the base of the pyramids are actually squares. Priests studied the sky, and they would notice the star that is now called Sirius. And what they noticed is that the star would appear shortly before the Nile flooded. From this, they were able to develop a calendar. The last thing that we're going to talk about is medicine. And because of the mummification process and burial practices, the ancient Egyptian medics were familiar with the human body. And here's a really good site, and it's in the link to the site is embedded in the PowerPoint that I'll put up, that I'm reading off of right now. And it talks about some of the beliefs that the ancient Egyptians had during this time. And one thing that I found very interesting is that Egyptian doctors mostly believed that evil spirits either got inside your body or sent poisons inside your body to make you sick. To cure you, the doctors made you eat or drink something very nasty smelling. They hoped the evil spirit wouldn't like the smell and would leave your body. Or the doctors tried to clean your insides out to get rid of the poison. And they would give you laxatives or bleed you. So some of their practices were a little bit primitive. And by primitive, meaning that they really didn't have any logic or real science behind them. But some of the things that they did do, which kind of benefited the human race, was they performed some of the first surgeries. They found ancient scrolls that gave instructions for stitching, or doing stitches, and they also had a practice of putting moldy bread on wounds, and moldy bread would have penicillin, which is a type of antibiotic. They also used willow bark as a pain reliever, and willow bark is one of the main, is how we got aspirin. So these are some of the ways that ancient Egyptians expanded their knowledge. Please don't forget to answer your questions embedded in the tutorial, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.